When the question came up about young people's involvement, I thought of the young people from Parkland High School. And so I'd like to hear both of you briefly say something about common sense gun policy.
So this is something that, of course, I've been thinking about a lot and talking about a lot. And I'm glad that we're talking about this a lot. We have a very serious gun violence problem in this country. It comes to a head and it becomes a big topic of public conversation in the wake of incidents like the massacre in Parkland, Florida. But school shootings are only one part of this problem. We have children who are growing up in neighborhoods where they are dealing with gun violence in their streets every day. We have women who are killed by intimate partners with guns every day. We have people, thousands and thousands of people across this country who are committing suicide by gun every day. Gun violence is something that touches every segment of our community. We have to deal with it. I think the first step is universal background checks. We have to close the purchasing loopholes so that no person in this country can buy a gun without a background check. We know how to make that happen. We have systems in place, we need to improve them, and we need to make sure that everybody across the country abides by them. We also need to repeal the Dickey Amendment, which is a piece of legislation that prevents the CDC from studying gun violence, which is ridiculous. Gun violence is a public health crisis. Our public health agency should be able to study it. We need to repeal that amendment, and Congress needs to fund those studies. And we have to insist on honest conversations. We are not going to solve this problem unless we're willing to talk about guns. And I look at our congressman, John Katko, who every time the issue of guns comes up, deflects to mental health. We have a mental health crisis in this country. We have to deal with it. The gun problem is not a mental health problem. It's a gun problem. And at the same time that he refuses to acknowledge the gun problem, he's benefiting from tens of thousands of dollars from the NRA, and then, surprise, surprise, co-sponsors the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, which our own law enforcement community tells us makes us less safe. John Katko, the guy who says he's going to keep us safe, is letting people bring guns without any kind of background checks or permitting required into New York State, where we have collectively decided that we're not okay with that. We have to stand up and fight for those common sense gun safety measures, and we need to turn people like John Katko, who are beholden to the NRA, out of office.
Jane is right. We need to stand up. Enough is enough. We have to be talking about banning assault weapons, universal background checks, ensuring that we have sensible gun safety reform. I want to see investment in technology for tracking guns. We need to ensure that we're investing in ways to deal with this problem, not dismissing it because we want to make the conversation about the Second Amendment. Listen, I served in the military. I want to protect the Second Amendment. I want to ensure that those who legally have guns and protect them and safeguard them are part of the conversation. We need to do that in this country. But at the end of the day, there are guns that are weapons of war that do not belong on our streets and do not belong in our schools. So I want to see real conversation. And I believe that the fact that I have a military background, my children had guns growing up, that I can be at the table, that I can talk about it. And I can talk about not just how we go about it, but invite people to be open together in a bipartisan way in talking about how we solve this problem. What I want to offer too is that when we're talking about this very issue, We need to ensure that we are bringing to the table what Dana's talking about, that gun violence is happening not only in our schools, but on our streets, domestic violence, everywhere we turn. So it can't just be a conversation about mental health. It has to be a conversation about guns themselves. I want to talk about the no-fly, no-buy rule. We cannot have people suspected of terrorist activity having access to guns. And we certainly can't be talking about arming teachers. It's ridiculous. We can have this conversation. We can talk about sensible gun reform. And I believe I'm the best candidate to do that. Thank you.